In the heart of Disneyland, there exists a timeless attraction that beckons visitors to embark on a chilling journey through the supernatural realm, a place where ghostly apparitions, eerie ballrooms, and restless spirits await. Welcome to a cultural analysis of the Haunted Mansion. In this video, I won't be alone in discussing the cultural meaning behind this attraction. I brought in my good friend Myra to help out.
Hi C, my name is Myra and I love to study African diasporic histories, especially in the American South and the Caribbean. Haunted Mansion is one of my favorite rides at Disneyland, second only to Indiana Jones when it's actually working, so I'm absolutely stoked to share some of my insights about it.
And now, we'll take you back into the boundless realm of the supernatural. The Haunted Mansion is themed to look like an antebellum plantation mansion, commonly found in the American South, specifically designed in mind of the mansions in New Orleans. Walt Disney famously never wanted a dirty and decrepit old mansion in his park, so he wanted to have a mansion with an ornate and appealing design, but one that could contain something far darker. Famously, the American South was the epicenter of the slavery in the United States, and of course, in the 1860s, a civil war was waged over the debate of slavery and its place in the American economy. While I can't go into excruciating detail about the horrors of the Civil War or slavery, it's no secret that it has left a deep scar in the South that can never, nor should be, ever forgotten. And, in designing the mansion to appear as a plantation mansion, it draws both a visual reminder of said horrors and sets the stage for the meta-narrative of the ride.
See, I like to frame the mansion through the lens of a grim, grinning ghost. Think about it, how can something be grim and also grinning? What does such an expression convey? Is it sadness, mischief, whatever conflicted emotions that come with being dead, but also enjoying the luxuries of the afterlife? I like to frame it in the context of the Southern backdrop, as depicting the tension between the South's oppressive histories and its open-ended future. Confronting the past is scary, yeah, but it forges a newfound appreciation of life, of the moments of laughter and intimacy and joy that transcend mortal existence that are universal among humankind. Grim Grinning Ghost, to me, sums up the intricate balance between darkness and hope that characterizes the ethos of the American South. This dichotomy is really embedded within the region's cultural fabric, echoing through its architecture, customs, and the collective consciousness of its people. Within the historical context of the antebellum South, that French Quarter-type style of the Haunted Mansion really echoes the legacy of the plantation house. Yet beneath the surface of the celebration lies a profound tension, a tension that arises from a haunted past. The idealized South was shattered in the post-Civil War period as Southerners were forced to grapple with a history marked by the violence of the enslaved economy, continued subjugation of African Americans, and a bitter struggle among all marginalized groups to secure their identity. The South, once characterized by these lofty ideas of morality, etiquette, and beauty, had to reckon with its repressed historical realities. The polished facade of Southern gentility decayed, much like the plantation house. It was consumed by its own history, haunted by the ghosts of its past. The very essence of Southern Gothic as a literary and cultural movement embodies the struggle. It's an exploration of the grotesque underbelly beneath the South's idyllic surface. As per the Oxford Research Encyclopedia, the Southern Gothic texts also mark a Freudian return of the repressed. The region's historical realities take concrete forms in the shape of ghosts that highlight all that has been unsaid in the official version of Southern history. But let's get to the grinning part of our grim grinning tale. Disney obviously wants to put a positive spin on the story, right? The Imagineers do this very tactfully, in my opinion, by acknowledging that ghosts aren't always vehicles of trauma, but also of restoration and sometimes joy. In the South, people are brought together through their past. They grow closer to each other and their personal histories. Especially in New Orleans, funerary rites take a different tenor than the somber and mournful affairs we usually associate with death. It transforms into a celebration, a vibrant and lively commemoration of a life lived. From the lively jazz festivals of New Orleans to the post-mortem potlucks abundant with baked potatoes, collard greens, and Mississippi Delta casseroles, death rites embody a unique Southern perspective, one that embraces the fullness of life even in the face of loss. Death is an affirmation of life and of all the messiness that comes with it. The singing wake in the Haunted Mansion especially evokes this, namely that rural tradition of all-night wakes filled with music, dance, and of course, good food.
As guests pass through the mansion, they encounter the floating head of Madame Leota, the spiritual medium of the mansion. Her job is to bring the spirits of the past into the realm of the living guests in order to assemble a swinging wake. Of course, spiritual mediums are often found in voodoo practices, along with general occultist beliefs in the 19th century. The belief in being able to either interact with or directly contact beings from regions beyond became widespread through the Victorian era, as the Industrial Revolution created a new middle class. These people would have more time to spend living in cities rather than living in agricultural environments. In doing so, they were in unfamiliar environments where every creak of a floorboard or bump in the night could linger in their minds. Gas lamps have also been cited as causing hallucinations, which could explain why many people of the time could claim to have seen spirits. Along with this, the progression of technology led to photography, capturing a point in time on a physical sheet of silver and polyester. Of course, the technology was far from perfect, and the smallest imperfections could be seen as a potential ghost. Or, in reality, there would just be light leaks in the film, which would cause an accidental double exposure effect. Funny enough, we're still not fully beyond mistaking camera errors as supernatural phenomenon. Just take a look at this Disneyland security footage. People think it's a ghost, but in reality it's effectively just a double exposure effect. Getting back to the connections to the history of the American South, this could also tie into the cultural scarring of African Americans, where we feel a deeper connection to our past than many other groups living in America today.
I can talk about this forever, but I'll keep it brief. During the antebellum period, a remarkable phenomenon emerged in the form of seances, where individuals, primarily women, sought to commune with the spirits of the dead. One important group engaging in this practice was the Harmonic Circle, based in 19th century New Orleans. The Harmonic Circle was primarily composed of Afro-Creole men from similar backgrounds. They were educated, grew up Catholic, and were largely free during the antebellum era. This group's seance records reveal their deep engagement with an idea they referred to as, well, the idea. The idea represented egalitarianism, equality, and brotherhood, and was central to organizing the spirit world in their seances. This concept offered a solution to the problems of materialism, greed, and equality that plagued the material world. What is particularly fascinating is the role that women played in the spiritual movement. By participating in seances, women, especially Black women, challenged regressive and patriarchal modes of knowledge and authority, such as canonical theology and politics. They became conduits for the power of oration, foresight, and political influence. While men were involved in spiritualism, women overwhelmingly dominated the movement, wielding their spiritual gifts to practice a novel form of political resistance. Also, as a side note, I recently found out that Sojourner Truth was a spiritualist as well. Already renowned as an abolitionist and suffragist, Truth became captivated by spiritualism around 1856 when she was invited to speak on abolition by the Friends of Human Progress, a radical Quaker sect. It goes to show how seances have helped minority women find their voice. All that being said, I am so fascinated by the connection between these historical accounts and Madame Leota. She uses her voice to physically alter the environment and the boundaries between life and death. Her spiritual abilities challenge and shift existing power structures, fabrics of reality themselves. She is ultimately the catalyst for the ghost's appearances. I personally see her as a homage to all the women, especially the Black women, who connected to the spirit world in their quest for transformative restoration and reform. What would a world brought out by these women look like? Perhaps it may be a lot more like the Singing Wake. On top of it all, Madame Leota's crystal ball was designed by a Black man as well. Just remember to give Lanny Smoot his due credit as another incredible Imagineer worth honoring.
As guests pass the seance room and into the ballroom, they pass through the attic, where an eerie presence calls her home. Constance Hatchaway, often nicknamed the Black Widow Bride, resides here among her treasures from all of her previous marriages.
The Southern Belle is a pretty prominent archetype in the literature of the American South. She's often portrayed as the epitome of grace, beauty, and genteel femininity, which is emblematic of the antebellum era. Her personality is often elegant, charming, and very adherent to Southern social norms. She's this fragile and virtuous woman who is crucial to an 1800s Southern social hierarchy. However, Southern Gothic writers very much enjoy attacking this trope. Consider Flannery O'Connor's A Good Man is Hard to Find, where the central character, a grandmother, defies practically every one of these traits. In a story that outlines how this woman brings about her own murder, which is dark, I know. She lies to and manipulates her children, serves only her self-interest, and is driven by this warped nostalgic longing for a bygone past. But all she really wants is to just uphold the privileged social standing it came with. In contrast to the typical portrayal of the Southern Belle as this damsel in distress, the grandmother's actions lead to her own tragic demise. Her attempts to control her family's fate ultimately culminate in her encounter with the misfit, an embodiment of the harsh realities that belie the romanticized vision of the South. In her final moments, the grandmother's vulnerability is exposed, underscoring the frailty of her idealized image and highlighting the stark disparities between her perceived identity and the really complex, often bleak nature of Southern existence. Constance Hatchaway has no such development. She's just a murderess who doesn't lose her head in the process of it all, and she serves as a contemporary example of the subversion of the Southern Belle trope. Instead of being this demure, passive Southern woman, Constance quite literally acts as this portrayal through her very explicit glee at murdering and seizing the wealth of her husbands. The delicate elegance of her wedding dress is juxtaposed with the implied violence and ruthlessness that comes with the act she's holding. She's kind of like the grandmother, manipulative, dark, and cold-hearted under this genteel, feminine facade. Demonizing women to convey a literary theme might appear problematic, outside of its historical context that is, but then again, it was a pointed commentary on the limitations of Southern womanhood and the expected performances that came with it. And all things considered, it's always fun when evil characters boldly dismantle the status quo. Constance's pure lack of morality makes her this kind of ghostly girl boss. At least, she probably thinks of herself as one.
As guests pass through the mansion, they pass one of the most famous characters from the ride, the Hatbox Ghost. A character who's pretty unthreatening and silly on the ride, that for some reason they made the villain of the new movie. Again, I'll let Myra explain this one.
The most comprehensive way to make sense of the Hatbox Ghost aesthetic is through Alan Spiegel's 1972 article for the Georgia Review, entitled A Theory of the Grotesque in Southern Fiction. Obviously, this didn't inspire The Haunted Mansion, which came out in 1969, but it definitely lends some insight into what makes this particular ghoul so iconic. Spiegel notes the following: the grotesque refers to a type of character that occurs so repeatedly in contemporary Southern novels. So regularly does he appear, and so distinctive is his appearance, that the very Southernness of the novel can often be defined by his presence. That is, his presence attests to the fact that we are in the fictional universe of the South. The Southern grotesque, according to Spiegel, is a figure that is either mentally or physically deformed. Now, I'll put deformed in quotations because it is used in an ableist way here, since Spiegel applies a negative connotation to the word. We have to remind ourselves that tropes revolving around disability were very common in Southern literature, and were unfortunately expressed through ableist language more often than not. That being said, Spiegel charts how this so-called deformity generally leads to the social ostracization and alienation that reveals the cruelty of Southern societies. The grotesque is often a pharmakos, or an outcast whose punishments are disproportionate to his acts. While this does make me think about how the Hatbox Ghost is always alone when we see him at Disneyland, I honestly don't think that Disney is all too interested in his relationship to other characters, say, much less his moral qualities. Instead, I think Disney just wants to channel the aesthetic Spiegel describes. To him, the grotesque is a disruption of the status quo, a manifestation of the physical and mental distortions shaped by a rapidly changing Southern society. For the Hatbox Ghost, the deformity is so severe, so bizarre, so oddly whimsical that he does not embody a distorted society, but a distorted reality. He immerses us into this new world of graveyard ghost, easing us further into the ride's macabre fantasy. The goal of the Southern Gothic grotesque is to destabilize our vision of the world by warping it. The Hatbox Ghost, with his leering grin, does this in a more playful, teasing way than his literary counterparts, easing us into the scene to come. Here, in the heart of the ethereal grounds, lies a cemetery frozen in perpetual twilight, as the moon casts its ghastly glow upon the tombstones. Time, it seems, has come to a standstill in this realm. Trees, gnarled and twisted, clutch at the mists that linger. Amongst the crumbling mausoleums and weathered graves, grim grinning ghosts find solace in the rhythm of an endless waltz. The hierarchies, prejudices, and anxieties of the living matter not in this spectral sanctuary. A knight sings alongside his executioner. A gallant king and a queen play like schoolchildren on a teetering seesaw. The graveyard is a place where what was once strange becomes familiar, and what was once familiar becomes strange. It is only fitting that the climax of the ride is the most potent embodiment of the Southern Gothic. In 1951, literary critic John Aldridge described early 20th century Southern Gothic literature as representing the profound poetry of disorder. I can't think of a more fitting description for the scene in the Haunted Mansion or of the ride in its entirety. Many of the happy haunts embody that Southern Gothic grotesque that we talked about earlier. These appear damaged, delusional, or disfigured in some way or another. It's worth noting that the grotesque historically manifest when characters shed the puritanical decorum expected of upper-class Southerners, rejecting etiquette and anything of or relating to that prim and proper Southern standard. Upper-class culture in the South heavily relied on regulating individual behavior to create an illusion of social cohesion. So the destabilizing or outright destruction of these constraints created a new playground for interaction, one that is chaotic, anarchic, sometimes thrilling, sometimes disturbing, but most of all free. The ghosts play without expectation, without distinctions between class or race or age. They're just here to have a good time, to come out to socialize. What's stratified in life is unified in death. As folklorist Mark Helmsing would put it, we lose our senses of place and space, time and memory, representation and transgression as we enter the graveyard scene. We are not situated in a particular culture or moment in history. Instead, we're swept into the fantastical jamboree as one. Whether we're a prisoner, an opera singer, or an unfortunate bricklayer, the celebration places us in the same fundamental position. The ghosts call to attention the sobering but also soothing fact that we're all headed to the same destination, regardless of our differences. We'll all be grim, grinning ghosts someday, so we may just as well revel in the company we have, mortal and spectral alike.
All of this reminds me of a core belief of Walt Disney when he was creating Disneyland. Evangelist Billy Graham once referred to Disneyland as a nice fantasy, to which Walt snapped back by saying, "You know, the fantasy isn't here. This is very real. The park is reality. The people are natural here. They're having a good time. They're communicating. This is what people really are. The fantasy is out there, outside the gates of Disneyland, where people have hatreds and people have prejudices. It's not really real." Walt understood that we all might come from different backgrounds or hold different beliefs from each other, but we all want the same thing in life. We all want to be seen and heard from, to be remembered and loved. While the Haunted Mansion may be a reminder of the grim past we're all connected to, it reminds us that through understanding our great historical challenges, we can build a better future. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and thank you to Myra for helping out a ton here. She's very well versed in African American culture, so I really couldn't have made this video without her. If you'd like to see more videos like this, be sure to like and subscribe, comment down below your thoughts on the Haunted Mansion. Were you aware of these cultural and historical inspirations? I leave that all to you. Also, join my Discord server if you'd like to keep in touch and chat with me one-on-one about all this nerdy stuff I talk about on my channel. I'll be going back to my regularly scheduled Pirates of the Caribbean content soon enough, but I'll certainly talk about other related IPs as well. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to my patrons. You guys help keep the lights on over here, so it means a ton that you're supporting this channel. Thanks for watching, and a hitchhiking ghost will follow you home, and they'll haunt you until you return.